Welcome back to the Power Up Progression podcast. I am so excited to introduce a good friend of mine and somebody that's going to drop tons of value today. His name is Nick Nanton. He went from $1 million in debt and making only $45,000 a year with a baby, and then he almost filed bankruptcy. But through grit and action, he was able to turn it all around. Now an Emmy award-winning director and producer, he produces media and branding content for the top thought leaders and media personalities around the world. He has over 3,000 clients in 36 countries. Recognized as a leading expert in branding and storytelling, Nick has authored more than 24 best-selling books and produced and directed more than 50 documentaries, earning 5 Emmys with 18 nominations. So Nick is also an award-winning director, producer, songwriter who's worked on everything from large-scale events to television shows with people like Steve Forbes, Ivanka Trump, Sir Richard Branson, Rudy Ruettiger, which, by the way, I love that movie, Brian Tracy, Jack Canfield, and honestly, the list goes on, guys. He's also been seen on USA Today, The Wall Street Journal, Newsweek, Business Week. I mean, the list goes on there, not to mention all the TV channels that he has been on and dropping value across all those platforms. But really, to top it off, he's an incredible family man, an incredible friend, an incredible personal mentor to myself, my friend, Nick Nanton. What is going on, brother? How are you?
Good, man. We're likely during this podcast at some point to hear dogs barking or kids coming in from school, which is the beauty of what I do. I have an office that's somewhere else, but I'm working from home right now, and I love it. So we will likely get some outside noises, just so you know.
That is all good, man. That's actually the fun part. You know, I've had some weird interruptions before, so it keeps us on the edge of our seat for sure.
Exactly.
I appreciate you joining us today. I know you're about to go to Colombia, and I want to talk about that in a minute. But for those of you who don't know who you are, I want to talk about before, all the Emmy Awards and amazing interviews that you had with literally the brightest and most brilliant minds in the world. Let's talk about before that. Let's talk about the story. Tell me a little bit more, because I actually didn't know about being in debt, what happened, and where were you at mentally, and then we kind of go from there.
Yeah. So I've been a musician my whole life. I mean, if I turn the camera, you can see guitars and everything. And I'm still a musician. It's an addiction I can't shake. I write country music in Nashville still. As growing up as a kid, I played sort of the two things I did. So my family's from Barbados. We're immigrants who moved here to the U.S. when I was 1. I have an older brother. A lot of my family moved legally to the Orlando area. That's where I still live. My brother is in Portland, Oregon. He's about to move to New Zealand, actually. He's a physician. But my parents, our whole life, encourage us. They encourage us in the arts and all sorts of other things. He did a lot of acting, playwriting. I did a lot of music, and I played a lot of tennis. But they said, hey, whatever you do in life, we'll support you in anything, but get a profession. And my brother and I are like, yeah, okay, whatever. So he becomes a doctor, I become a lawyer, but that's a different story. So I went up through school, up through high school. I think that's just an important cutoff. Started playing guitar at 6, started writing at 16, put up my first record at 18. And then I started playing competitive tennis when I was 12, all the way through to the end of high school, got recruited to play in college, was trying to make it to the Olympics for Barbados. I tore my knees, both of them actually. I tore one, and then when I was hopping around doing something stupid, after surgery on one, I tore the other one. Yeah, bad story. I'm mixing a sound mixer for audio recording from one place. Anyway, that's a story.
Stick to it, brother.
Yeah, exactly. So I got into college. Tennis wasn't really a thing because I got recruited to play at some schools that weren't great schools. They were not bad, but I had grades to go and free ride. I had 3 full scholarships to go to University of Florida. And so my parents were like, hey, are you going to play pro tennis? I'm like, no. They're like, yeah, we all know that. So why don't you go to the school, a good school? And my brother was already there. Great school. I mean, it just hit the number 9 public university in the country. So it's a great school and a big school, 50,000 kids, football, the whole deal. Right. So I went there, but then I the tennis aspect of playing 4 or 5 hours a day was out of my life. I went back to music, and I started producing a bunch of records. I started doing a bunch of stuff. And I would say that what got me, it's really interesting because I don't think I wouldn't do anything differently. I'd say anything. Most things I wouldn't do differently, but I'm happy with the way it worked out. But I took on student loans, even though I had multiple full rides. I took on student loans because at different times there were opportunities that if Like my parents didn't have the money to do it. So if I wanted to be in the game, I had to, it's like I bought recording equipment. I bought my first video camera with a student loan. And like, look, it got me, I was in undergrad, I finished undergrad in 2.5 years. I stayed in one more semester so I could get paid to go to school because I couldn't start law school yet. And, so I did 12 hours of independent study in blues guitar with one of my favorite professors. He's like, just don't bother me. Come back at the end. I played some songs for him. He gave me an A-. It worked out. And nice. I got all my money for staying in school. So, and then I went to law school, but, and that was like a 3-year process. But so basically, but during that whole time, I started running businesses like in high school, like small businesses. Then in college, I had a screen printing business and a recording studio. And I used to print all the fraternity and sorority t-shirts for them and all that stuff. And so like, I didn't stop doing all the things that I wanted to do. School was like, I did well in school, but it was a pastime. It was something I never enjoyed. I enjoyed some of the stuff of my fraternity life and football. I had a good social life, but I was like driven to, I wanted to be in business. I wanted, from my parents, so many times it felt to me like they were stuck because they were new to the country. They didn't have enough money. They did everything they could and we had tons of love and support, but sometimes it just wasn't we just couldn't do it. And I knew I just never wanted to be beholden to my freedom by money. And so I'm not a money driven person based on things I do, but I was always very driven to make sure that it didn't control me. So to some extent it did drive me, just to make sure it didn't stop me from helping more people or doing other things or whatever. And again, my parents are like saints. They served at every homeless shelter. And I mean, they're great human beings, but this money wasn't their thing. And so, and I think it's because they had to leave a whole life behind and start all over. Right. And they had multiple successes and failures. And so I started building businesses from young because I figured out at 13 or 14 years old, I was playing tennis, that I could teach group lessons and I could get $5 a kid for a half hour and get like 10 kids. I can make $50 in a half hour. And so I started like, okay, there's a way that if I provide value to other people, I will get value back. So anyway, so I ended up in law school. I got a huge opportunity to run. I wanted to be the president of a record label. That's why I went to law school. So I kept songwriting. I was managing bands. My business partner now, Jack, I met him when I was 15, and his daughter, because my cousin dated his daughter. Then his 2 daughters ended up going to University of Florida with me. I reconnected with him because another friend of mine ended up marrying one of his daughters. And he and I started, so I met him when I was 15. We started our first business. And I convinced him to invest a little bit of money in my business at 22 to manage bands and stuff. And he's my mentor still today, my business partner. I mean, one of top, outside of my immediate family, best relationships in my life, right? And he's 30 years older than me, and so I knew I needed help, and I just didn't know everything I needed to know. And so when I went to law school, I was finishing with 1 year left. I got offered this amazing opportunity in music with Cinemark Theaters. I don't know if you know them. They're out of Dallas, right? So
yeah.
My business partner and his other business partner knew the owner at the time of Cinemark Theaters. It's been sold since. And they cut a deal for me to be the CEO of a new division called Cinemark Music, where I was going to bring bands. I was going to develop bands, produce their music videos and their albums. We were going to run those, in the previews. The theater's empty most of the time, and they got sound and lights and audio. We're going to tour bands to the theaters. We're going to sell the merch at the stand. It was like the best idea ever. But I had to move to Orlando from Gainesville. But in law school, the weird thing is you get you can do your last year at any accredited school and still graduate from your home institution. So I took a risk and came to Orlando. My wife and I got married after my first semester of law school. So we've been married a couple of years, but we moved to Orlando with 1 year left of law school. And she was working as a nurse, helping put me through school and all that stuff. And I went to a university in Orlando that was $50,000 a year for that last year. So I took on that debt too. And then the day I got there and showed up for the first day on the job I had moved, we found out from Cinemark after I'd met with them in Dallas, we got everything set up, we were starting to work the bands, that they had sold all their screen time in the previews to like a big ad agency for a ton of money. They're like, we're not buying it back. I'm like, I don't blame you. But like I'm about to start going to night law school because I changed over because I was going to come to Orlando and do this thing. And now I don't even have a job, and we just bought a house. My wife's a nurse. So basically over the course of that time, that year, my business partner, Jack, who I still work with, he's like, hey, you can come work for my other company. I was like, well, okay. He's like, but you need to know the rest. You got to work for my nephew, not me. I just sort of oversee things. We only need someone in customer service right now. So that pays $25,000 a year. And you're going to have to work like 9 hours like everybody else. It's like 8 to 5 with an hour off for lunch. And then I had to go to school from 6 to 9, 3 days a week. And by the way, my wife got pregnant like right in that time too. I don't know how it happened.
Of course.
Yeah. We have 3 kids now. I figured out what caused the problem. I fixed it. But so my long story is almost done, by the way. But so sort of all this like got me into this scenario where I started. So even in that, I ended up working with my business partner's company, even after I went to law school and passed the bar and all that. I finished law school and passed the bar because I liked it. I was learning so much. But, when you start at 25 grand a year and you're not in sales, like I kept trying to get into sales and they kept keeping me in like business development and stuff. So like in order to pay my bills, just to pay my student loans and stuff, I needed more money than I could make there. So eventually he basically said, all right, well, you're miserable. My business partner's like, you're sort of miserable. It's not good for me or you. How about you don't work here anymore? And then I'm like, okay. And he's like, how about we start a law firm? I'm like, sounds great. He's like, well, we'll tell my nephew, that you'll be here till the end of the year is like 60 days, 75 days. And then you'll start fresh January 1 of 2007 was when we started sort of this company, this version. So all that basically led up to this fact where during that time we had the house, I'd lost the other gig and things. I'm always been optimistic. Like I'll always be the optimist because I know in most cases I can make revenue. I can turn something, I can sell something, I can provide value to somebody that serves them and they will pay me for it. But at the time I didn't have enough of a pipeline, enough of anything that, I could either sort of try to file bankruptcy at the time because I was going in the hole like $4 or $5 grand a month, just with trying to pay bills and all that stuff and student loans and just the baby and my wife, we wanted her not to have to work and she didn't want to work. She wanted to raise the kids. That's what she wanted to do. So that was what I was committed to. So I was like, all right, I'll figure it out. Just let's do that. And so I got to the point where the real estate market was hot at the time. And it was like, well, I can either just sort of throw in the towel now or we can try to flip some houses. So I started flipping some houses and a couple of them went well, which got me through like another few months. And I ended up stuck with like 4 of them maybe. And it was sort of at the time when they weren't making you any down payments. My business partner was a real estate agent and broker. So they'd give us the commission. So we'd put down like $5 grand or something. And then when we closed, we got more than that back. And like everybody else, I was like, I thought I was a genius at the time doing it because it was working, right? So good. And then the market crashes. And I'm like, I got over $1 million. I think it was about $1.5 million in real estate. I was going 10 grand a month in the hole on credit cards and all that. And I went with my business partner to see we're both lawyers, right? But we went to see another guy I know is a bankruptcy lawyer. And I went through like sort of all this stuff. And I was like, that's my wife leaving to get the kids. So I went through all this stuff. I'm like, you know what? Honestly, I would rather not file bankruptcy, by the way. Like that has not ever been in the cards. And it seems like it's like just as hard to do that as it would be for me to just try. Like if I know that that's an option, why wouldn't I just try everything else first? And if I have to fall back on that, I have to fall back on that. And that's what I did. I never went to the second appointment with a bankruptcy attorney. And I just, through good mentoring, plenty of people around me. I hate when people say they were self-made because that's such BS. No one is self-made. Yep. We're all built by the community, the family, the support, friends, whatever it is around you. So I had great advice. I didn't have any money really, but I had great advice and I was able to sort of get everything, negotiate out of things. And it took me probably 3 or 4 years to get clear. That I remember honestly, because I can tell you this because it's far gone now, but it might be back. That's the life of an entrepreneur, right? We go broke, we make money, we go broke, we make, it's what it is. Because you're always taking chances, like smart ones, but you if you believe there's opportunity and if you don't do it, no one else will. Like, are you a piker? You got to do it, right? So at the, it's like, I got through a lot of it. And I remember I actually was out at that time. By that time, we were building the agency and I was out speaking on the road. I remember I would be out doing speaking gigs, like, most of the time they weren't that big, but 40 people, 50 people, 100 people, sometimes hundreds. And I'd get off the stage and I'd have calls from debt collectors. And I'd be like, it was such a weird dichotomy of like teaching. I wasn't teaching financial success. I was teaching how to brand yourself and it was working for me. And I was building my way out of all this stuff, but it was just such a weird thing. Like, man, this sucks, And so it was just, it was just keeping my mind right, having the right people around me, helped me understand that like, I hadn't done anything criminal. I hadn't done anything wrong, which was good. I had tried to make things work and I didn't. So, okay. My business partner's like, look, you didn't do anything wrong. Like, how did you do your loans? Okay. Everything you did was above board. So you're not going to jail. Like, that's never going to happen. Like, so that's the first thing. Like, they're going to come lock me up. I can't pay my debt. Like, I was young. I was 25, 26, whatever. And so I'm like, what do I do? And so he's like, look, just remove all that. And the other thing he was like, and look, in your credit score, like, just understand that it's an important thing for you, but no one's going to die if your credit score goes down. Because my parents, like, they were like, growing up, like, dude, perfect, never miss a payment. And that was my goal, but just I couldn't make any more payments. And so so it's just like having to just buckle down and go, okay, here's where I am, what got me to here. I actually don't, like, a lot of times it's a lot of mistakes. And there's certainly some mistakes in real estate and things. As Brian Tracy said in the movie I made, and there's no mistakes, there's just learning experiences. So I would probably classify in that category. But what do I need to do differently to make sure I can get out of this situation? And in many cases, actually, it was just time and building my own economic engine as opposed to relying on working for someone, which I'd never really done my whole life, by the way. I mean, I ran businesses in high school. I taught tennis. I had my business in college, and I was just in this like 3-year period of learning a ton, helping them build their business, but it just was never going to amount to what I needed to make for my family. So once I got out, it probably took me a year or two into the business to really start doing well and sort of catching up. And then, man. So then this is our 11th year in business, I think, of the agency. I mean, in some way, shape, or form, it's certainly grown and morphed into what it is. We started as like a law firm because we were both lawyers that were representing people in their personal brands. We now own the largest personal branding agency in the country. Like you said, over 3,000 clients in 63 countries now. And so, but I still, by the way, I honestly thought, and maybe this will help someone else, I'm an idiot. So I honestly thought at some point, everything would just get easier. Like the amount of money or the thing, or you get old enough now, you're no longer a kid. It's just, or like you just turned 64 and then you have like, no, like, this is like, life is a constant like puzzle and an amazing ride. And I just learned, you just got to learn. You probably I think you saw the video I posted a while back, the hammock principle, like about relaxing in it, but you just gotta roll with it and see where it leads you, man. And you literally have to enjoy it. It's sort of sick, but you have to enjoy it because there's still months. Like I have a client who does over $1 billion a year. And I mean, that's not a little bit of money. I'm like, dude has nice stuff, right? I mean, he has some nice houses, a nice jet. But like I was interviewing him for the movie I was making on him, and he had me interview their family attorney because he took over that business from his grandfather started it, his dad then, and he took it over and grew it and did a great job. But his family attorney is like, no. In the last 10 years, he's put his entire fortune on the line 3 times to grow this company. Like put it on the line, like close. I was like, all right, it never changes. That's okay. We're good.
You don't feel so bad, right? You don't feel so bad.
I don't feel so bad. So that was a long answer, but that's my answer.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's crazy. You went, and it's what I want to know is like you going through this whole process, and obviously the ups, the downs of being an entrepreneur. And you said something to me not too long ago. You can't have 2 masters, right? And I think that really hit home. And I think we got to be smart with it, like you had said, and make that shift when it makes sense. But you do got to go all in, right? Or just or not, right? But pick one or the other. Don't do both. But be strategic with it. But when you had those down times, which a lot of us entrepreneurs do, and trying to start a business, and even like you said, 5-10 years making $1 billion, you have these down times.
Right.
What do you suggest people do during these? Because they may be in one right now. One of the listeners may be in this downtime and they think they may give up or they don't know what to do, which is causing stress on themselves, which really is causing stress on their business, the tension on their business because it's cutting off their relationships, their health, everything's going to shit because of one issue, which will be solved if you just are able to chill out. But how do you suggest people do that? Because there's a lot of ups and downs. I think if they have something tangible that they could use during that moment, it would help them.
Yeah. So a couple of things. I am a firm believer in that you are the average of the people you spend most time around. I think a lot of people cheapen this message, by the way, talking about money. Like that's one thing, but I would just put it as whatever I have different mentor groups that I like, guys that I've been doing a Bible study with for these entrepreneurs for a long time, or pastors at my church, or business guys at events like Jay and Mike, Jay Kinder and Mike Reese, like we are sort of like we mentor each other in certain areas. And like, I focus on different things in different groups. It's not, that is not, I think it's such a cheap way to use that expression about money. Because if you hang around with 5 guys who cheat on their wives, you're probably gonna be that guy too. If you hang out with 5 guys who are super loyal and spend a lot of time with their family, if you hang out with 5 workaholics, I mean, that's just sort of, it becomes your normal. If you hang out with 5 people who eat really good, you feel like the idiot ordering the double cheeseburger, like you do. So I think that's super important, and to have a balanced life in that way. It's interesting. I'm actually doing a documentary series right now on James Altucher. You know who he is? He's got a book, Choose Yourself. He's got a really great way of putting that sort of like the 4 things in your daily practice. You need to make sure you're spiritually healthy, you're, I think, emotionally healthy, you're physically healthy, and you're creatively healthy, I think is the way he puts it. But I'm not going to quote it. Go look it up. Great book. I'm in the thick of an 8-part series right now, so I've spent a lot of time with James recently, and I have a lot more to spend. But it's a really good strategy. But it's sort of making sure your life's in balance, because what happens is at that point in life, you are hyper-focusing on one chasm in your life. That is a hole that has to be filled. However, forsaking everything else for it is not going to fix that problem. Very likely, if you are in balance, you will find an easier way to fix that problem. And I would say the other thing is just, Dan Sullivan, I think you've seen the movie I made on Dan, one of my mentors, amazing dude.
Yes.
Just watching his movie. See, part of that, like, I get so much great content just because I'm interviewing these guys all the time. And so like I had to stop one time, you appreciate this, and go, man, I need to intentionally make sure my wife is getting enough like positive, like data and input and pouring into her life, because everywhere I go, I'm like speaking at an event, and I'm just sit there for an hour, and I got Jay Abraham or Tony Robbins, or I go interview them. Like, I've constantly got this wisdom being poured into me with grand perspective, because most of these guys are not spring chickens, by the way. And so I'd say, make sure, so Dan Sullivan, he says, look, I make a list every night before I go to bed. I don't do this, by the way, but it's a good idea. I do it differently. I'm just not as structured, of the 3 things I'm going to get done tomorrow. And if I get those 3 things done at 7 a.m., I'm done. If I get those 3 things done at 11 p.m., I'm done at 11 p.m. He goes, and if you just would do that, okay, so he talks about free days and vacation, all that stuff, super important. But if you get 3 things done every day, even for a week, you got 15 things done. And if they're meaningful things, you just got done like 14 and a half more good things than most people in a week. Yes. And the compounding effect of that is unbelievable. So I would say if you're in that spot, sort of recap, make sure you're filling your mind with great stuff, with the right things that will help you think positively, because you cannot be creative when you're in a state of scarcity. You cannot do it. So you got to get back in a state of creativity and abundance. Then from there, make sure you're putting the right things in your mind, surround yourself with the right people, and then Rome wasn't built in a day, right? We've heard that. But what can you do every day to start walking out of that fire pit? Because every day, if you do 3 good things, or 4 or 5, you make the number, you're going to get a little further away from death row, usually, right? So that's what I do.
Yeah, I love that. And you talked about the 3 things. I think what happens as entrepreneurs, and I'm at fault of this as well, where we are all in sometimes, but we're so all in that we try to get 15 things done in 1 week or 1 day. And we may do it, but the feeling the next week of that just got hit by a Mack truck comes into play. Yeah. Now we have a week off, and then it's harder to get back on it. So I love that idea of just take 3 things and grab that big mo, as Darren Hardy says, right? And create a compound effect, because I'd rather you do 3 things for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days versus 15 things for a week and then nothing again for 2 weeks because you're so shot out, right?
Absolutely. I'm reading a book right now, audiobook, as I run most of the time, called The War of Art. And it is mind-blowing. There's a phrase in there, I'm not going to get it right, and I don't know if he was quoting someone else, but it's a mind-blowing book, by the way. You got to read it. And also, Real Artists Don't Starve, also another awesome book. And I treat entrepreneurship as an art to me. It is, whether you're in the creative side of it or not. And so he says something like, there's a difference between that which is urgent and that which is important. And you need to understand that which is important always needs to be done first. And it's like, because most of us do what's urgent. I mean, we fight fires. I mean, that's what we do every day, with everything. And it was just like the flipping that around and going, it's very important, which one to do first, that which is important. Like, okay, all right, got it. So anyway.
That's awesome, man. And you brought up Dan Sullivan. And for you guys who do not know him, he's an absolute monster of a coach, of a person. He's a phenomenal mind. He's still crushing it at his young age. And you had sent over to me the unique ability. And I put all my clients through this, but it changed my life, man. It really did. And I continually think about that on how I can improve it. And that gets into branding, really. And it helps you identify what your strongest characteristics are. It helps you articulate it to everybody else. Tell people a little bit more about unique ability and how it can help them brand. Since you do run the largest branding company in the world, tell them a little bit about unique ability, and then I'm going to dive deep into a little bit more branding.
Sure, yeah, and largest personal branding agency. I'm sure their corporate branding agency is much bigger, but that's okay. They can have it. So Dan Sullivan is amazing. He's my coach. He's the top entrepreneur coach in the world. I think you can go to dansullivanmovie.com or Game Changer Movie. If you just Google Dan Sullivan Game Changer Movie, you'll find it, and it's free. You can watch it because he wants to share his knowledge. Myself and Joe Polish, who you probably know, another friend of ours, David Berg, we gave Dan that movie as a birthday present for his 70th birthday. He's 74 now, I think. It took us 2 years to make it to. It's been out about a year, whatever. And so Dan has a concept called unique ability, and it sort of starts from the way I like to look at it is, I'll give you the 5-minute explanation. There's basically, the time you're born with unique abilities. Like any one of us, like even like LeBron James, like if he doesn't admit that he's a genetic freak of nature, like none of this works. Like you can't, not everyone can be LeBron James, and that's okay. But he was born with unique abilities that he certainly, that he nurtured over the years and worked hard. I'm not taking that away, but were he not, 7'9" or whatever, whatever. He's built for basketball, right? So he's coordinated, he's smart, he can think quickly, he has a photographic memory. If any of you ever seen him recount a play afterwards in his head, like, are you out of your mind? Like, it would take 27 cameras to see that. And he was absolutely right. Anyway, so you're born with these gifts. It's like you're cute, you're smart, you're funny, you're creative, you're whatever. And from 0 to 5, essentially, and this is also, I'm paraphrasing, I learned this from Dan. From 0 to 5, your family encourages you in most of it. Like, oh, she's super cute, or he's super, funny, or she's super intelligent, or whatever. And then basically, for most of us, they put you in the schooling system, which I'm not knocking school, but when a teacher has 25 ducklings that are 5 years old or 7 years old or 17 years old, they got to be in a system. Like, it's a factory system. Some ways irrelevant today, but it's a factory system. They got to get, so they basically beat those uniquenesses out of you because all the ducklings got to fit in the same square boxes. And then you go through like from 5 to like 22 or 25 and usually get in a bunch of debt to get this certificate in education that I'm not saying is unimportant, but to be a factory worker, whether that's a lawyer, factory worker, or whatever, it's just a metaphor. And then most people spend from time from their 25 to 65 trying to buy back their freedom. So from 65 to when they die, they can enjoy the same things they enjoyed when they're 0 to 5. And it's sort of just all backwards, right? And so Dan's concept is like, what if you just focused on now, whatever age it is, on your unique ability? What's your unique ability? It's that thing that the more you do, the more you love it. You wake up more inspired to do it every day. It provides value in the world. Ideally, there's people willing to pay you for that value as you get better at it and more precise with it. They will pay you more. And what if you just focused on that so you never wanted to quit? And it's like, wow, that's amazing. And so the concept is really that Dan teaches is really hard to figure out that one thing. Like, what's one thing? I do like a bajillion things. We all do. But he's like, Dan works in 25-year time frames. That's it. You got to, if you're going to do something, you got to commit to me for 25 years. That's Dan's deal. It's like, you really got to think it through. And it's going to change and morph, and he knows that, but it's the commitment, right? That ultimately makes you a better person, makes you see what's possible. Because if you're trying to become a millionaire from zero overnight, not going to happen. If you're trying to do it over 25 years, the path becomes much clearer. You only got to get whatever percentage better every quarter. So we go to Dan every quarter, either in Toronto or Chicago, depending on the program you're in. And basically every quarter we try to remove some things that we're doing that are getting in the way of us only operating within our unique ability. And so I liken it to if you ever bought a house and you remodeled something, like the kitchen's not quite right. Usually, like for me, it's usually my wife is like, we should change that color. Okay, cool. Let's do that. We change it, like, man, now the cabinets don't go with that. And so like, you're like repaint the cabinets or resurface them. It's like, man, now the flooring is just weird with those colors. So like the more things that you don't think cause you friction, if you remove a bigger friction, then you start realizing this is now my biggest friction point. And then you remove that. And so things you never even realized were causing friction are causing friction. They're just so far down the friction ladder because you have things at the top that are like, right in your craw all the time. And once you remove those, you'll start seeing the other things. So his sort of main purpose is like, figure out sort of your operating principles. And he's got a book on it. You should definitely go through. They even do consulting. I went through a full consulting day with them. I showed you sort of my sheet I came out with after doing it, which was a lot of pre-work and sending letters to people asking them for their opinion. It was a great process. But yeah, Dan Sullivan, strategic coach, all awesome, unique ability, amazing. But the overall concept that we could all at least start understanding for now would be, why don't we just work towards whatever age you are, working within your unique ability? There are people like Dan gives an example, like he's like, his accountant has been with him for like, or his controller has been with him for like 30 years or something. And he's like, I don't see her that often because she's in accounting and it's not usually where I spend a lot of my time. And Dan travels and speaks and stuff. And he's like, I ran into her in the parking lot not long ago. And she said, I just have to thank you so much for letting me, do your books for the last 25 years. Like, and he's like, me, I would have been like, shoot me if I have to do my books for one day. And here's this woman who has just been thrilled that she got to do what she loves. I provided the opportunity for her to do what she loves every day for the last 20, however many years. He's like, you got to remember there's people out there who love doing those things. And so learn to operate within your unique ability. And then recently he started talking about some of that. I'm going to share with you. It's again, Dan's concept. I'll share with you. Who, not how. The only question I got to ask in my life now is who, not how. I don't need to learn how to do another damn thing. I need to know if I need to get from point A to point B, who can help me get there, because I need zero more hows. And it's just like, man, it's my favorite question. I sound like an owl. Who? It's just like, that's all I'm doing.
I love that. I love that who, not how, because you're right. Like you said, you're trying to eliminate the tasks that you have going on. So use your resources. You kind of brought it up earlier, in the podcast about how you utilize your resources, and a way to become a giant is to stand on each other's shoulders. So tell us about personal branding. What are some of the biggest things that people do wrong that you see? And what are some of the things that they need to be doing? Because no matter who you are, where you're at, what your business is, you're a brand. Like, even if you work a 9 to 5, you're a brand. People look up to you, look to you, somebody does. But those of you starting a business, you are a brand. So what are some things you should stop doing and things you should start doing?
Yeah, I probably should have made sure my collar was straighter and stuff, first of all. But anyway.
Dude, don't worry. It's all good.
We're good. All right. We're just hanging out here. If we had beers, it'd be better. But
yes.
So I think one of the things that people confuse so many things about branding. And so I have a very simple way I think people should start looking at their brand. I by the way, think logos and colors and look and feel and all this stuff like that, a lot of people will charge you millions of dollars if you let them to design all that stuff. I think all that stuff is really important, but it's not where I would start at all. Like Coca-Cola has $1 billion to do that. You don't. What you have is you. So I break brand down very simply. Your brand is simply your story. And branding is simply storytelling. The only thing that you have that no one else can copy is your story, because there are events and things that happen in your life that led you to where you are today. And if you understand how to articulate that, it actually makes you the most uniquely positioned person in the world to solve your client's problem. And so you just have to articulate that. And it's really interesting. If you look, I just started, I was talking to someone about this. By the way, I don't think well silently. I think as I talk. So like I was doing a podcast here and someone asked me about this and I started articulating it. And I think there's something to it. Like most of the things that happen in our life that you can remember are a big part of your story, whether or not you think it is or not. So like third grade teacher telling me I was stupid, because I didn't understand that you had to just memorize multiplication. I thought at some point it was just going to make sense, and it never did.
Still doesn't.
So right. And so she's like, and you're never going to be able to walk around your whole life with a calculator in your pocket. Oh yeah, I got an iPhone now, but anyway, but she was like, but she told me in front of the whole class, she just blew up. I forgive her. I think she's like, you're so stupid, whatever. And it's like, that affected me way more than it should have, but like that hit me. Or like, there's that thing someone says to you at, even now at my age at an event, or they said to you in college that like really you still remember the way it made you feel. And if you look back and trace most of those things, I would guarantee you that a lot of them have affected the way you operate now. Some for the good, some for the bad. It's funny, I was interviewing Jack Canfield, Chicken Soup for the Soul. I sat down with an interviewer one time. He's like, hey, Nick, I want to talk to you about something. So think of it this way. Like, imagine you're going on a trip, you're going on a plane somewhere. Like, all right, got it. He's like, and I know you fly quite a bit. He's like, I know you're sort of fancy. You probably fly in the front of the plane. So if the captain walks on and he says, hey guys, we're going to have a great flight, and he walks in and locks the door, would you be concerned? I'm like, oh. He goes, well, what if that captain, if you realize that it was a 3-year-old in a captain's uniform? I go, well, that freaked me out. He goes, well, that's exactly what most of us are walking around doing every day. The 3-year-old version of us is piloting our body, because most of those visceral reactions and stuff we got by the time we were 3. And so there's a lot of deep work that many need to do to get out of those knee jerks that aren't the true you and how you would operate, but they're in there and they're piloting you. So, but just, and we're not to get too deep in any of that, but just like, there's so many things. Like, one of the reasons why I do what I do today, if I told you the full story of me getting into music, and at the time we had like Prodigy and AOL was starting to come online, but there was no like, oh, just Google it. And so like, I wanted to get a record deal. So I bought a book at the bookstore, like Everything You Need to Know About the Music Business, still like the main book for music. And it said, if you want to be taken seriously, record labels will not take your stuff unsolicited. You have to have an entertainment lawyer. Okay. So I'm 15 years old in Orlando. My parents don't have a lot of money, and I'm trying to hire an entertainment lawyer. So I got my phone book back in the day, like calling around. And I was like, hi, I need to hire an entertainment lawyer. And like, no, it's like, no one would talk to me except for one guy ended up talking to me. And actually I ended up literally 10 or 15 years later, I met him at a Bible study, and I'm like, you don't know that I know who you are. And let me tell you, you're a good dude, because you're the only one who took my call. And he was a great guy still. He was Matchbox 20's lawyer back in the day and a bunch of other people. And he took my call, and I remembered it. But so my biggest problem in that, and then when I went to college, I was managing bands and stuff. I remember so many times I needed to have a conversation, and literally and figuratively, literally sometimes I couldn't even get a seat at the table. Like, I couldn't even have the conversation. They wouldn't even talk to me, because I didn't have whatever it is they thought I needed to have, but I didn't even know how to have it. And then once I went to law school, everyone in the music business started returning my call, even though nothing about me had changed, but it was different. It's like, oh, this guy's he's a songwriter and a producer, but he's in law school. Like, it gave me some bit of credibility that was different than just being another kid in a garage writing music, whatever. And over the years, my business partner helped me realize that positioning is sort of everything. And your story and your position is what gets you the seat at the table. So literally, I would say, if I traced back the reason I'm in this agency, and I built my branding and positioning agency to help over 3,000 people position themselves, it's really so that they can have a seat at the table. Because I thought that was so unfair, and it was just because I didn't know how. No one ever taught me. I didn't have a mentor who, at the time, who knew how to get me a seat at the table. So I do it now differently through different media things. And certainly now, all the books I've written and the media I've gotten has led to my documentaries, led to my Emmys. And now I can typically get a seat at the table with sort of anybody. But it took a while to figure that out and how to do it. But that's one of the reasons I've done what I've done, because I was so frustrated that at 15, 16 years old, I couldn't even get a damn conversation with someone who could help me. And so I think if you look back, so that makes my story pretty unique because of the way, and I know there's a lot of my clients who, if I position it this way, if you're a dentist and you're not getting the clients you should because you're not even getting to have those conversations, just because you look like everybody else. And most people aren't running around going, where can I find an awesome dentist? Like, they're just not. So I have one client who's a dentist. He's outside of Columbus, Ohio. In his lobby, he's got a framed copy of his best-selling book with Jack Canfield's best-selling book with Brian Tracy. His other best-selling book he's got is framed when he's in the USA Today, when he's in Wall Street Journal, when he's in Newsweek. He's got frame stuff and pictures with the Emmys, with the documentary stuff he's worked on with me. And like, this is a dentist. So people walk in his house like, who is this dude? Like, he's completely different. And so he now gets referrals. I know I do, because I met a guy at my son's golf practice. Like, what do you do? I'm like, I told him a little bit. I'm like, let me send you some stuff. So I sent him like my media kit, like I sent you, right? Like my books, my stuff. And all of a sudden it's like, he's like, wait a minute, tell me more. And so now he's trying to refer me to people, but he's like, but I'm just imagining, but just the position would be like, hey, I know this guy, don't mess it up. Like, I'm going to give you a direct connection to this guy, and he's going to sell me. I don't have to do anything. So it's all part of the process of positioning. And so the most important things about branding is simply understanding that your brand is story. Branding is simply storytelling, and then utilizing different forms of media and marketing and PR to tell that story in a way that a lot of people will tell me, like, when they first call into when I used to take a lot of phone calls, they call and say, oh man, I'm not interested in personal branding. Or I meet people at seminars or when I speak. Yeah, personal branding is not for me, because I don't like talking about myself. I'm like, I don't either. Like, the whole point is, if you do it well, you don't have to. Like, everything else speaks for you. Like, the novice speaks about himself. The expert lets the rest of the world just tell the story for him. Like, how many times have I mentioned, Dan Sullivan and, Joe Polish and Jack Canfield and my other mentors, because they poured into my life. Like, I told everyone to go get their books and watch your movies. Like, they don't have to say anything. We just drive traffic, right? And hopefully if we do our job right, other people are going to tell their friends about this podcast and us and everything else, right? But it's all about putting quality content and messaging in the world. And you can't wait around for things to happen, but things do happen, right?
Yeah, I love that. Positioning to create yourself as a position at the table, right? And creating Evangelist. Jay and Mike talk about it all the time, raving fans. But yeah, you're absolutely right, man. How can we create Evangelist? And it's figure out, what it is that makes you uniquely you, and your story is that. You already have it. And I think that's brilliant. I don't think a lot of people use it enough. Now, you've got a seat at the table. Like you said, I mean, you've interviewed Tony Robbins, you interviewed Damon John, Joe Polish. I mean, you name it, you've done it. And it's cool because you're not one to brag about it or anything like that. You do it and you build these phenomenal relationships. And I know they've poured into you, so you probably have more than one. But is there one, maybe two, like key habits that you could tell the listeners that they need to immediately put into their life for success? One or two key habits that you feel are kind of outrank the rest?
Oh man. There's so much. I'm actually working on a book right now, like the best thing I learned from each of these people. There's one who's a guy who you probably don't know, a guy named Dave Austin, who is a top like mental coach for like World Series baseball teams and stuff like that. And I spoke with him years ago at an event. We both spoke. And then I interviewed him for something I was doing for clients at one point. And I need to go back and tell him this. It's probably been 10 years. And he said something to me that was just like mind blowing. And I use it all the time. And again, his name is Dave Austin. I want to give him credit. He said, so whenever I tell somebody something to do, one of the biggest problems I have is that it's so easy they don't do it. And he said everything easy to do is equally easy not to do. And it's like there's so many things that you could be doing right now. They're just easy little changes. But because they seem so easy, because they weren't like, I didn't tell you that if you want to have success, you have to join a cult, paint your bedroom red, and like you're like, all right, let's do it. And so you start making all these weird physical changes and stuff, as opposed to like, hey, drink 10 of these a day or whatever. Like, yeah, I know that, but I don't do it. So like one of the biggest pieces of advice I've ever gotten is like, pay attention to the simple things, because simple things usually work. And so the problem is everyone else overlooks them because everything easy to do is equally easy not to do. So that's a big one. Another one, let me just look at my list. I literally have a list. I've been keeping like an Evernote now the last few years because I have to write this book.
Yeah, that's amazing. I can't wait to read that book because, it's and that's another reason why I started a podcast too, because the more my guests pour into me, the more I can pour into the people around me. You know what I mean? And that's why I brought you on too. So.
No, I appreciate it, man. And so I got a great. So I was at the Vatican with Tony Robbins. Now this sounds like a joke, like sorry, Nick Nanton, Tony Robbins, and the Pope walk into a bar. But so Tony did this closing keynote. There's about 100 of us. There's mostly all geneticists and scientists from around the world. I was there with Peter Diamandis as his guest as part of the X Prize board. Dr. Sanjay Gupta, and it was Dr. Oz, and Tony. It was just giants. It was amazing. And Tony's giving this. Talking to him, and he says, I was speaking to a guy the other day, and he told me like, hey man, I got something that is completely you're responsible for, and I want you to know it. And Tony's like, well, you did it. I wasn't responsible. He goes, no, he goes, like, I realized that you always tell me like you got to be in peak state, Tony. He's like, and I realized that, anytime I'm not having a good day or I'm in a bad mood or I let something get to me, it's just because my standards are too low. I don't understand how to be in peak state enough. And Tony's like, holy crap, that like, he's like, I don't either, but like, it was literally like, so basically you get what you tolerate, like in life. It's literally, you get what you tolerate. And so if you're not willing to tolerate, being broke or being poor, it's going to take some work, but like, there's a reason why you drive through any trailer park, and I'm not making fun of people have Cadillacs and satellite dishes because they find the money for the things that are important to them. Now, series of decisions like that may keep whatever. You got to figure you got to figure out your own thing, but you get what you tolerate. Like if you tolerate, eating McDonald's every day, that's probably what you're going to get because it's like, that's what I tolerate. So I thought that was a great one. And then one more, I was interviewing Jay Shetty recently. You know who Jay is?
Jay's
See him on Facebook.
phenomenal. Yeah,
He's
phenomenal.
amazing. I can't wait to share this video at some point because I think he's going to use it in his book. So he wanted me to wait till after the book comes out. But the lesson is he went to monk school, right? Because he was a monk for 3 years. And I was like, monk. And there's like a monk test. I was like, monk test. And so the third month of the monk test essentially is they put the monks in training out on the street. And they told them, look, you have to fend for yourself, food, clothing, shelter for a month. And so like, first of all, I don't know about you. Like I'd like to consider myself a very abundance-minded person, but my butt puckers when I hear that. Like if I put myself in that position, like, wait a minute, you're going to put me outside today and just say, fend for yourself for the next month. Like you immediately go to, I just said like, how do I save extra food? How do I eat less? How do I, all that, like complete scarcity. And he said, until I realized within like a few days, I had time on my hands because it was all my only charge was that. And I don't know the exact thing about the monks, the type of monk he was, but obviously most monks I think are supposed to be spiritual and help people, right? That's like part of the thing, I think. And so he's like, I realized I had extra time. So I started helping people. And within like a week, I had like 8 places to eat dinner and 7 places to sleep. And like, there's nothing I couldn't get because I just helped other people get what they needed and they had more of what they needed in other areas. So he just gave it to me. And it's like the ultimate example of abundance. Like literally, I've heard the Zig Ziglar quote, or it's attributed to him. I don't know if he ever said it, but if you want, if you want to get what you want in life, help enough other people get what they want. I think it's probably meant well. I think again, people cheapen that all the time. Like, oh, I want to get something, so let me help a bunch of people.
Yeah.
That's not the deal. It's like help a bunch of people. And then, when the time's right, you'll get what you need, not only be more fulfilled and everything else. But I just like, again, as someone who really considers myself really abundance minded, like when the visceral reaction my body had when I heard, wait, what? And then hearing the true meaning of it all was just the whole purpose of it was for him to learn how to serve others first. And then he would get everything he needed. Right.
That's phenomenal. I had actually, I think it was Chris Harder on, and he said in a side effect to giving is getting.
Oh, that's nice.
That's brilliant. And it's add value, make a difference, right? And not asking for anything in return and do it for real. Like you said, don't, do it just because you're hoping for something in return, and put enough into the universe that it'll give back to you.
And that's why I get a lot of the interviews and projects I get, by the way. And there's probably plenty I don't get, but the ones I do, because I go at them for real. And the way I see when I'm with a Tony Robbins or a whoever, and I see how many people are so bad at shallow asks. It's just like, they have all sorts of filters usually up around them just to take care of those. But even people in live, like, it's like, hey, could you do, they don't say it this way, but it's, hey, could you do this for me? It's like, even like when I've been around enough bands that want to work in music and celebrities and stuff, like people at the most basic level, that picture that fan wants to take with whoever it is, it's for them. It is for the fan. It's like, let me take a little piece of you and parade it around the rest of my life and take credit for it because I have a picture with you. Now, I got plenty of pictures with famous people, and it's great to meet them, and I love having photos with them and everything else. But again, like, we don't even stop to think like, and in some cases they're letting you do that, or they know it's part of the gig. But how could you approach it in a way where you're adding value rather than just taking? Like, I don't know, but it just goes to show how, like, at the base level, our minds think so many times. And if you just do things for real and just with a mind to help, like, one of the hardest things that I do is convincing a nonprofit organization that I want to make a movie on them and I'm going to get all the funds donated, and there's no strings attached. They're like, wait, no. There must be, like, tell us the real story.
What's the catch?
What's the catch? And so, like, I have to have them talk to like 4 or 5 other nonprofits I've done this for. Like, yeah, no, Nick just came in and made the movie, brought some really nice people with him. They funded it. They all donated some money, and then we got the movie, and it was great. But it's like so hard to convince people that this is really, I'm trying to help you. I mean, it makes sense for my business because I'm helping other people. They're funding it. They're getting positioning. So there is a give and take here, but I'm coming to them just saying, hey, let us serve you. And it's like, wait, what do you mean? And then just one more thing, because you said something that reminded me of another Dan Sullivan line. He talks about strategic byproducts. And so oftentimes when you set out to do something, particularly a big goal, like, I don't know, to write a book or to whatever. So write a book's a good one. Oftentimes the strategic byproducts along the way are much greater than the outcome of the book. So it could be the content you develop, the relationships you develop, the processes you learn, the thought process you develop, whatever it is oftentimes way better. And so many times I think him saying that to me opened up my mind to, instead of only being so tunnel visioned to getting the end product I want to get done, to be open that along the way, if I don't look, I will miss it, because Dan also says, another Dan Sullivan, the brain only, the ears only hears what the eyes are looking for, what the brain is looking for, or whatever, or the eyes only see what the brain's looking for, whatever. But like, you have to be looking for it. So now in my process, I'm not great at it yet, but I try to make sure that, the zag you might take might be the way more valuable than the thing you set out to do. And most of us like, oh, I'm going to do that. I'm going to run through that brick wall. Someone opens the door on the side and say, no, I told you I'm going to run through the brick wall. Right. And so it's just the way we operate. So strategic byproducts are an awesome thing to pay attention to also.
Yeah, man, it's so funny. I just did a Facebook Live about this, talking about the person you become is more important than the goal itself.
Yes.
Right. The person you become along the way. And it's hard. And I think it goes back to the very beginning that we talked about, is the messiness, the dirtiness of being an entrepreneur. Not only that, of doing the shit we need to do when we don't want to do it. And the person you become throughout that process is more important than actually reaching that goal. Let's talk real quick about your movies, man. Like, I watched the one about human trafficking, which blew my mind, and it's phenomenal. I mean, not just obviously the product itself, but everything in between. And I'm excited to watch the Rudy movie, because as I told you in a text, that is absolutely, it actually bonded my father and I, because we watched the movie growing up. It's something we always reference and whatever. Yeah. But both those movies, I haven't seen the Rudy one yet, because I know it's coming out soon. Tell us about like how that was, maybe the human trafficking one as well as the Rudy one. Let's kind of dive into that real quick.
Yeah, so the Rudy one is sort of easier. I'd met Rudy, he'd spoken at my event. I met him through a friend, and I was talking about documentaries and shared some clips. And he just, at the back of me, was like, dude, you got to tell my story. I'm like, he's like, the real story is even crazier than the movie. I'm like, well, let's talk. So we ended up doing that. And over the course of most of 2017, we filmed at Notre Dame. I went to the USC Notre Dame game. I interviewed Dick Vitale, and I'm a Gator fan, so it was a great excuse to interview Danny Werfel. There you go. Danny Werfel, because he's a Heisman winner. And then I tried to get Tim Tebow, but he's too busy playing baseball. And Lee Corso called me back on his cell phone. Like, hey, man, I can't do it right now, but call me anytime. Like, it's just crazy relationships, again, things you get along the way. And it was such a cool movie because, I mean, Rudy's story it's an underdog story. And so many of us have been underdogs and will be underdogs in one way, shape, or form. Like, my big thing is, like, I'm not a Hollywood guy. I live in Orlando. Like, everyone thinks I live in LA. But there's, like, when I go to do traditional LA stuff, I'm an outcast, dude. I'm an outsider. Like, they don't, like, and now I probably feel that way more than they do. But there's been things definitely along the way to make me feel not that welcome, right? And in certain areas. But I'm learning to change that. And what you put out is what you get back, all that stuff, right? So, but Rudy is like the ultimate underdog story. And the coolest part about all of it is, like, I mean, I'm surprised Rudy hasn't called me while we've been on this podcast, because he calls me probably multiple times a day. And it's like checking in, making sure I got what I need for the movie, making sure, like, just, he's just persistent, dude. And that is Rudy. I mean, he is persistent. Like, you will somehow end up doing what Rudy wants to do. And, yes. and he's got a great heart. He's a great dude, but, like, literally that is Rudy, like, to the core. Like, that's his greatest strength and his greatest weakness. Like, the sword cuts both ways. I have those same things. Like, your greatest strengths are always your greatest weaknesses. I love that he's one of my best friends. I love him, and he's just the greatest dude. But just, it's so funny. I mean, like, anytime I'll be doing a work or meeting or something, like, you know, I get a call from Rudy Ruettiger, and I always got to, like, because you can't not, like, everyone's like, like, so I took up and we've been working on stuff. And so the book is out of the movie. The book version of the movie came out a few weeks ago. Hardcover, sort of coffee table book you get on Amazon. And then the movie comes out end of September on Amazon, and October 16th, 2018 on iTunes and Vudu. But I'm really proud of it. It'll make you cry. It's just got so many great lessons in his story. You know, he's the oldest boy of 14 kids, 7 boys, 7 girls. Most people don't know that. His family all loves him. Those characters in the movie were sort of set up to, you know, they had to show some adversity, but they all sort of worship him. I mean, they give him a hard time too, but they all went by the name Rudy growing up playing football because their last name's Ruettiger. And so if you're in a room and you yell Rudy, like, you're going to get 7, what? Like, it's like this. So like when I interview him, I'm like, hey, I know they call Rudy, they call him Danny Boy is what they call him. His name's Daniel. They call him Danny Boy. I'm like, look, I interviewed 5 of his brothers together. The 6th one couldn't make it. And with him out of the room, with Rudy out of the room. And I'm like, hey, I know it probably makes you just your blood curl a little bit and your hair stand up that you're Rudy too. But in this movie, nobody knows him as Danny Boy. So you're going to have to call him Rudy. So like, they'd be like, well, when Rudy did it, it was great. The whole experience was awesome. And just, everyone loves Rudy. He is a great human being. He is persistent as they come. And I love him to death for that. And he's, I hope Rudy lives another 100 years, but either way, I will never lose a moment of the thought of what I've learned from that guy. So that was amazing. Comes out soon. Here's a fun one for you. Rudy was on the cover of Sports Illustrated before he ever played football as a ball boy mopping the floor in the arena of the Notre Dame basketball arena, because he actually used to live in the basketball arena, not the football stadium, because they needed insurance for the basketball arena. In order to get it, they had to have people living there 24/7. So Rudy and one other guy each had two like dorm rooms. He used to live in the old mail room actually there. In the new mail room, it was a dorm before. And so on the cover of Sports Illustrated, I actually had to license it for the movie. You see this guy dunking over the top of, I think it was a guy from UCLA, dunking on a Notre Dame guy, and his legs are up in the air, and there's Rudy underneath with the mop. I mean, it's just, you can't make this stuff up. I mean,
that is great.
He boxed at Notre Dame before he was a student. He was on student government at Notre Dame before they found out he wasn't a student. I mean, the story is epic, so I can't wait for you to watch it. It's amazing.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Human trafficking, another quick story. Russell Brunson, if you know Russell from ClickFunnels. Russell and I had met a couple times. He had seen the movie. He was at the premiere I did for the movie I made on Peter Diamandis called Visioneer on the first private space flight. And we got to know each other a little bit. And he's like, man, I'd love to do something like that at some point. And I just kept in touch with him. And he called me out of the blue, October of 2017, said, hey, man, would you ever consider making a movie about human trafficking? I'm like, well, man, if God gave me this ability and I don't use it to help kids, like from sex trafficking, like, who am I? And so he tells me about it. I was like, yeah, of course I'll tell that story. But we both agreed we didn't want a movie that highlighted. We didn't want a movie that highlighted just the problems. We wanted a movie that highlighted solutions. And so I, like with my new Canines for Warriors movie about PTSD and service dogs, like I want to show solutions. There's plenty of problems. Like, let me share a solution that you could get involved and make a difference. So Russell was working with this organization called Operation Underground Railroad. They save people from modern day slavery. So he started telling the story, and it's an amazing story. And part of the reason where the story came up from was this kid named Gardy was kidnapped in Haiti, and the founder of OUR, Tim Ballard, found out about it, and he wanted to help, and so he had to quit his job at the government with the Department of Homeland Security and all this stuff. So I knew I knew that part of the story would be better if I went to Haiti, like to just interview the guy and learn about what they had done in Haiti. And they'd done a bunch of missions in Haiti. Well, then next thing you know, I like, hey, Tim, can we do these dates? He's like, yeah, it's perfect. Then like a couple weeks before, he's like, hey, great news. We had done this raid and the government was corrupt and these guys bribed their way out of jail. And when when we go back down, you're going to be there. We're going to go break in their houses and rearrest them and put them back in jail. I'm like, oh, cool. And then it turned into this nighttime raid in Patienville outside of Port-au-Prince, Haiti. And it's not the most inviting place, Haiti, anyway. And so we're there with like former, Navy SEALs and Homeland Security and CIA. And we ended up in bulletproof vests doing this raid in the middle of the night. And it was the most unbelievable experience of my life. But it's a once in a lifetime only experience. And it's all documented throughout the movie. Thankfully, everything went great. The biggest problem was we had to pay off cops to figure out where these traffickers were, and we just didn't know if the traffickers were paying the cops more than we were to know when we were coming. So that was sort of the dicey part. But yeah, the movie came out amazing. I'm so proud of what we were able to show. We by no means these guys are heroes, man. They do this like all the time. We just went once and filmed it and told the story, but it's an amazing story. And again, more props to Russell Brunson. What a great dude for just saying, hey, I want to help. I'm paying for this thing. Just go do it. And he's a good dude, really good dude.
That's awesome. So, you tell everybody's story, but at the end of the day, there's a story that you got to tell. And you've been going over a little bit here and there, but at the very end of your day, you're going to, reach the pearly white gates and he or she's going to be standing up there. And what do you want, he or she, God himself or herself, to say to you?
Well, to quote the Bible, "Well done, good and faithful servant" would be a okay start. But I would, man, I would hope that a lot of people would say, "Hey, man, Nick did everything he could to help as many people as he could." I mean, our mission statement for our company is to help the most people, help the most people. And it takes a second to understand that. But it's like, I want to help the most people like you get the best that you are at what you do. So you're affecting thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of lives, so that I just had a part in helping you utilize your unique ability, because I don't have it to get out there, but I have a skill set that can help you get to more people. Let me use that. And so I would hope that, God says, "Hey, man, you helped a lot of people. Good job."
That he will. I promise you that. That's for damn sure. So, all right, but before we wrap things up, I'm going to do two last things. Number one is I want to give you 4 words, and I want you to top of your head tell me what you think. Does that sound good?
Okay. All right.
It could be a word, it could be a sentence, but whatever you think, top of your head. You ready?
Yeah.
Failure.
Not an option.
Fear.
Work through it.
Success.
Is not what you think it is.
Whew, I like it. And last but not least, hustle.
Yin and yang. For every bit of hustle, you need to relax. There's a lot of people out there, hustle, grind. That will literally just wear your ass out. Maybe there are people who are intended to do that. I don't think as human beings we were created to do that. I think we were intended to work very hard and very smart, but that also includes making sure you have time to rest so you can be the most abundant, creative version of yourself. You can take care of those around you. Many of us, I heard someone say the other day that we're so intentional about our businesses, and so few people are intentional about their personal relationships and their family. And just like you schedule meetings and conferences, I don't go down to the level, by the way, either of like scheduling date night. I just make sure my wife and I get to go out sometimes. Like I'm not a computer either. Like I don't want to like schedule dates all the time. Like not my deal. But like, just how about pay attention to her and see maybe what she needs. Like, where is she feeling down? Can I help? Wow, there's another human being living in the house besides me. So I would just say, hustling and grinding is all great. You got to be willing to put in the grind and do the dirty work. But like, that doesn't mean 24/7. That's not, you'll never get to where you want to be if that's what you do. You got to learn, you cannot ever get exponentially better by constantly just hustling.
Yeah, I could not agree more, man. And the success part. Oh, that was a good one. I loved it. I loved it. All right, let's wrap things up here with the whole point of this show is to help people get actionable tools to be better today than they were yesterday, right? Things that they could actually implement to take massive, aggressive, annoying action so they can start designing the life they've always wanted to live. So 3 things from Nick Nanton that they could do immediately after this podcast to start being better today than they were yesterday. Fire away. I got my pen and paper ready, so.
3 things you can do. I would say look back at your past and start looking at your story, because every one of us writes it off as unimportant because we lived it. So start there and figure out like what are the important points of your story that tie everything together to where you are now. There's a reason you're doing what you're doing right now. I would say that's one. Number 2, man, I'll give you an example of something that just really changed my life, and it will be a different application in your life. But I, like everyone else, especially when I was in debt, trying to get out of debt, like we do a lot of hustle, we do a lot of grind. I started speaking a lot, I started traveling a lot, I started doing things. And eventually one day my wife's like, "Hey, we have 3 kids and I did not sign up to do this by myself. Like I actually like you," which is weird. She likes me, but like we like you around. So like we need to sort of figure this out, or else not only are we going to go crazy, we weren't at the point like yet where our marriage is going to fall apart or anything, but that's how it happens, right? It never happens in one day. It happens like over time. And so she's like, so we put a limit on my travel of 7 nights a month is what we decided. And I have to break it every now and then. It has to be a very unusual reason. But it made me intentional. It made me make better decisions about what I said yes to and no to, because I get amazing opportunities to go to Grammys and Emmys, like all sorts of cool stuff, and then consult and make movies and human trafficking, the greatest things in life. I mean, a lot of pastors lose their families because of not being intentional enough about it, because that's like the best excuse ever. It shouldn't be an excuse. It's not like I'm doing this for Jesus or God, like, and hopefully you are, but it can also become an excuse. So set intentional guardrails that make you make good decisions. And third, understand that you weren't designed to stop. When you stop, literally you're done. So start building a life with Dan Sullivan's unique ability concept and other things that you enjoy every day, so that whenever it stops, it stops. Like, you might have been in the middle of something crappy, but that's life sometimes. But as long as you put your best effort forward to make sure you are helping other people, accomplishing your goals and doing your thing, don't try to determine a stop date. I actually thought about this the other day. I think retirement and savings. So let me get this straight. If you retire and you're trying to live off your savings, you're basically trying to die faster than your money runs out. I don't get this. I don't understand. So don't do that.
Oh man, those are great bombs that just been dropped, Nick. And I love what you said about intentional guardrails. I've never heard that. I've heard it in different variations, but intentional guardrails, guys, you need to listen to those 3 things and implement them immediately. Nick, tell them where they could find you, what you have coming up. The floor is yours for them to creep on you, stalk you, and do whatever it takes to get into your basically table to have a seat.
Awesome. And I want to give credit too, because the guardrails concept, I just applied it to that, but it's from Pat Rigsby. Pat is one of the top fitness coaches in the world. You should look up Pat too. I'm a big fan. Like, I didn't learn this knowledge by osmosis. I've been surrounded by amazing people, and you should check them out too. My name, Nick Nanton. You can find me anywhere with that. As long as you spell it correctly, you'll find me at nicknanton.com. I'm Nick Nanton on Twitter. I'm Nick Nanton on Facebook. One of my cousins just named their kid Nick Nanton. I'm like, he's in for it because I'm going to beat him. They will never find this kid online. So anyway, that you can find me easily that way. Twitter, Facebook, all the other stuff. I'm starting to put out a bunch of stuff on YouTube. I have a podcast called One-on-One with Nick Nanton, where I'm taking a bunch of my big interviews and putting them out. And then also there's video versions that's starting to come out on YouTube. I'm hosting a new show. Larry King is executive producing with me. We'll be coming out soon too. So lots of stuff coming. Yeah, man, get on the bandwagon and let me know how I can help you.
I love it. I love it, brother. Any last words of wisdom you want to leave these people with?
Never stop learning, man. I'm glad you guys are here. I'm glad we have this conversation. This is a way for me to learn too. I learn by engaging, and like, my unique ability is having great conversations that lead to important outcomes. And I don't know what that is today, but hopefully it helped a bunch of people, and we had a great conversation. So I don't do anything if it doesn't start with a great conversation. I learned that from Dan Sullivan. Like, I know. You want me to write a memo or a no? I'm not doing that. Let's have a great conversation. Let's see where it goes. So never stop learning. Do this stuff. You'll win.
Nick, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you for everything you've done for me and my family, just by being there as a resource and for me to bounce ideas off of. And obviously you coming on a show, adding the massive value that you just did, but through what you do on all the platforms, I'm incredibly grateful and honored to call you a mentor, to call you a friend, and to have these types of conversations with you. And I truly, truly believe if anybody wants to take their brand, wants to take their life to the next level, they need to just look you up. They need to figure out what you're doing and find a way to invest in themselves. I know it's hard, right? Personally, I know. But figure out a way, whether it's right now or soon, but have a process. And Nick's going to be your guy. Nick, I appreciate you more than ever you could ever imagine. So does my daughter, Aria, and so does my wife, Ashley. You're a phenomenal human being. Guys, go follow Nick Nanton. Go digest his content. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to this podcast and write a review about something Nick said that you had a huge aha or breakthrough. Last but not least, give. Take this podcast, send it to somebody that you think could basically, it could help them today, tomorrow, to the future. Send it to at least one person that you know it could help them be better today than they were yesterday. But Nick, once again, I appreciate you so, so much. It was a pleasure having the conversation with you. And we'll definitely be talking soon. Be safe in Colombia. Definitely when you come back, we'll reconnect. But guys, until next Tuesday, go follow me at Real John Marone and make sure you keep creating the ultimate version of you. Have a good one, guys.